Hey, Henry here, and this is the first in what I hope will become a regular series that I'm calling Page Files. In this series, I'm going to be showing off the various gaming books, guides, and magazines in my collection, and I'm very pleased that the very first episode is going to feature this magazine. Today, we're taking a look at Read Only Magazine, issue number 11. And I've been a subscriber to this magazine since I think the second issue, way back in 2021. So each issue of this biannual retro gaming magazine has a theme. And the theme for this issue is friends. And I'm always eager to see how each article is going to tie to the theme. Sometimes that's done in very surprising ways. So it's always nice to see how that is accomplished. So, starting out, we have this very nice cover. The cover art's always very unique for each issue of this magazine. I think this particular one does an excellent job of conveying the theme. Although, admittedly, I did not recognize the inspiration at first. This is from A Boy and His Blob, and I actually had to ask the magazine creator and cover artist Kyle VonKubik what it was based on, and he graciously responded. So, opening up, we have the inside cover and table of contents, which immediately brings back memories for me of my high school yearbooks. I just love the way you have the layout of these pages and all of the messages scrawled in the margins. And then you have the childhood photos of most of the contributors, which I think is an excellent touch. I think this was very well done. So turning the page, we have our very first article, A Cut Above by Peter Graphic. And this article is about a co-op puzzle game called Snipper Clips, Cut It Out Together by SFB Games. I'd never heard of this before, but it sounds like a cute little couch co-op puzzle game. And the author does a good job of describing it and showing how such games can really connect you with friends, and talking about some of the nostalgia of connecting with friends over such games in the past, whereas today we're mostly relegated to playing online multiplayer games, which just really don't have the same feel to them as a good couch co-op game where you're playing with your friends in person. So our next article here is How My Friends and I Saved the World as Ninja Androids by Celeste Roberts. And this one was a very interesting read. It talks about several different games that have playable female characters, which I know is a big thing for Celeste, the author. Ultimately, it goes on to talk about how her love of video games and Japanese entertainment eventually helped her to connect with new friends in a new school via fan fiction that she started writing, in which she included those friends as characters. It was a very interesting read. I think that it does a really good job of showing how something that may at first not be a common interest among people can eventually bring people together if presented in the right way. I really enjoyed this read. Moving on, we have Double Dragons, The Heart of the Yakuza series by James Boyachuk. I'm very familiar with this series, but I've never played any of it. So I really wasn't familiar with the individual titles or the characters that were mentioned. But effectively, the article talks about how the series breaks the noir tradition of the lonely protagonist by actually giving the main character friends and the role that those friends play throughout the games, and how they kind of set an example for what friends can be. I think this is also another good read, as is typical for this magazine. So I read next, in this case comic, is Friend by Morgan E. Richard. And I really enjoyed this. It's just a short 2-page comic about making friends and their lasting impact that those friends can have on our lives. It's a really short read, but I think it's certainly a nice inclusion in this friends themed issue. Next article, It Seems I Came to Leave by Nicobun. So this one is another one that's primarily about a game series that while I have some familiarity with, I'm not intimately familiar with each title, which is The Legend of Zelda. But the author here goes on to talk about both the games and a Nintendo Power manga series from 1992, and the way in which Link is given friends throughout the series, and how those impact the play and impacted the way he sort of engaged with the series. So I thought that was an interesting look at the specific author's relationship with the game and the series. This next, not article, but I'll say thing, is called Friends Flips, a solo RPG about making friends, which is designed by Kyle VonKubik, again, the magazine creator. And this really is appealing to me. As someone who doesn't have a lot of friends nearby who like to play this sort of thing, I've always loved the concept of solo RPGs, but I haven't really tried one out. So I'm really eager to try this. It looks very simple. It just covers 2 pages here. It seems like something that will be fun to check out, maybe play through a few times. And I really like seeing things like this included in the magazine rather than just a series of articles. Things like this, things like the comic, I think add a little something extra to the magazine, and I really appreciate that. So the next article is also by Kyle VonKubik, is Pac-Man Pal. And when I first saw this, obviously I knew it was Pac-Man related, but I didn't recognize the title as being the title of a game. But apparently this was an early game in the Pac-Man series, and in one in which Pac-Man had a friend that was integral to the gameplay. And I had never heard of this. I suspect most people may have also not heard about it, or at the very least had forgotten that Pac-Man had a friend early on in the series. So I think that was a nice little look at the history of a game that we're all familiar with, or at least the series, but not that game specifically. All right, let's see. So next up we have Sea Swallow Me, I've Reached the Water New, My Friendship with Sonic the Hedgehog by Blair Bishop. This is a very interesting one. It's a fairly long article coming in at 5 pages. Effectively, it's about the author's young or early experience with growing up in a very rural environment, having trouble making friends, which are both things that I can really relate to. When you live in an environment like that, there just aren't that many friends your age close by. But he goes on to talk about playing Sonic Heroes, and talks about how that kind of set an example of him of camaraderie in a way that he hadn't maybe really seen before. From there, led to an interest in Sonic and him becoming to view Sonic as a friend, and kind of the lasting impact that had on him throughout his life. So again, a very interesting take on the theme, and a really very personal story that I think everyone should appreciate. This next one I was very excited about, and to be quite honest, I haven't read it in detail because I really want to take my time and savor it. This is Our Friends Electric, an interview with Yutz of Geography of Robots by Celeste Roberts. And this is specifically Geography of Robots is the developer of the game Norco, which is actually a game that I learned about from Celeste. Actually appeared as a co-host on a podcast episode with her about the game. It's a game that I really loved, that really kind of touches on some kind of important themes, I think. And I'm really eager to read through this interview and kind of see what the developer has to say about various things from video games and his early experiences with those onto Norco specifically, and his kind of thoughts or process for game development and things of that nature. So I will be going back to that one, absolutely, and just taking some time with it. The next, and I think one of the last articles, but not the last, Pokey Minch, The Downfall of Friendship, An Untold Story. So this features the character of Pokey, or also known as Porky in some versions, from the Earthbound game, or Mother 2 and Mother 3 for the Japanese versions. And this is written by Jordy Gaspard. And it's basically a fictionalized telling of the relationship between the titular character of Pokey and Ness, who's the protagonist of Earthbound. And it really kind of just fleshes out the relationship between them and kind of tells it from the perspective of this character rather than from that of Ness, which is the one that you experience in the game. It's basically fan fiction for Earthbound, which I kind of love. And I really enjoyed reading through it. And I actually would really love to see more of this kind of thing featured in future issues of the magazine. As we near the end, we get this kind of ad for open call for submissions for the next issue, issue 12, the magazine, which is coming this winter. And the theme for this one is foe, to kind of offset the friend theme of this one. So I'm already looking forward to seeing what contributors come up with for that theme. I've been kind of trying to think myself what ideas I would have if I were to submit something, and I have yet to come up with anything. And now on to the last article of this issue, which is On Being Reckless with Hearts in Kingdom Hearts by Kirby Kruger. So I tried playing one Kingdom Hearts game and did not get far into it. So again, I'm not really familiar with the games very much. But basically the author here talks about how he started with the sequel to the original game, and so went in missing maybe some key information that caused him to early on form a connection to a specific character, and then later being disappointed with that, and how if he had played the first game prior to that, he would have made the same mistake. Interesting read. Not one that I particularly understood, since I'm not familiar with those games to that level, but still a nice read. And that concludes the articles. All we have left here is this nice back cover featuring a sad Rob, the robot of early NES fame. This is illustrated by John Sullivan. We have his information here. And there's a barcode for you can scan if you want to check out the magazine on social media, which I would urge you to do so. And that is a wrap on this first in the series again of Page Files. If you enjoyed this, I would love to hear your comments and feedback. I do intend to make this a regular thing because I have stacks of gaming books and magazines that I would like to showcase in videos. I also have subscriptions to a few print magazines because I very much like to support those, and I would love to have an outlet for sharing information about those as they come in. So I would love to hear your thoughts on this video in particular and the concept of the series in general. You can always follow me on social media. I am late to gaming pretty much everywhere you could imagine. And of course, like and follow if you want to see more content like this in the future. Thank you, and I hope to catch you later.